ever since I was a kid, I've always liked the outdoors and hunting and watching deer. And one person that really inspired me when I was young was Charlie Alsheimer. This photo here was taken by Charlie Alsheimer. Charlie's known for studying white-tailed deer and speaking at churches. He was a great Christian man, and I just always had a lot of respect for him. And one thing he did is he took a spike buck from the Adirondacks and brought it back home to his home close to my dad's farm in New York State, and he put the deer in the enclosure as a spike buck and just let the thing grow, and it turned into like 160-inch deer. And I just thought that was so cool how this little spike buck can turn into like a huge 160-inch buck. And for New York State, a buck like this is just like that's like the ultimate, like that. You can't get much better than that in New York State. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And I've been fortunate enough to take bucks of this caliber, and it's awesome. So I will just want to talk a little bit here about antlers. So these right here, when I was a kid, then, or soon after I first started hunting, then this buck here was on my dad's farm, and we knew he was around, and I looked really hard to find his shed antlers, and I couldn't find them. And I took my little brother with me. I calmed him into going with me, and I walked past this shed right here, and he picked it up. So then that was pretty cool. We got that one antler, and 100 yards away, I thought I searched the area, but apparently I didn't search good enough, because my dad found the other side of them when he was plowing the field. So that was just one really cool buck. To this day, I don't know what became of this deer, but that was one of those deer I was just like, wow, that thing's out there and it's really cool. So a few years back, 2 years now, then I picked this shed antler up with my dad. We were just walking in the woods and we found it. If you notice, the main beam there is flat. This surface here, right here, is really flat, and I picked it up and I was like, wow, that's really unique. And his tines, they all tip in like this, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I picked it up and I was like, yeah, it'll be a nice deer next year, whatever. And the next year, then I ended up shooting this buck here in deer season, in the gun season, and I shot him, and it wasn't until after I got home I was like, you know what? I'm like, I think I have an antler from that deer from the previous year. Sure enough, I had his antler from the previous year. It lays right inside there. He's got the same curved tines, and if you notice here, his flat beam right here, this one here has the same flat beam. And this buck here, the potential this guy had was amazing. Like, this was I'm guessing a 2-year-old deer, and really pretty. And he turned into this one here, which was actually a non-typical. He turned into a non-typical 12 point. It's hard to see, but he had double split G3s on either side that were almost as long. They stuck up like this on either side, and then his G4s were just like a little crab claw out here. Anyways, I was just like, wow, that's really cool to see a deer that goes from this here turn into just like a solid 130s inch buck. So that was one buck that I had the opportunity to find sheds from and then shoot the deer. So okay, that's pretty cool. So I just kind of got into shed hunting. It's like, it's really fun to find shed antlers and then match them up with deer. So this spring, yeah, I guess it's spring, I was shed hunting, and I found this deer. I'm like, oh, okay, like that's a pretty big buck. And I was like, boy, I wonder what deer this is. And I picked it up, and got looking at it a little bit. I'm like, wait, I'm pretty sure I have the shed antler from this buck here the previous season, because I picked up a nice shed antler last year. And sure enough, I have his antler from the previous year. It lays right inside there. He's got the same, if I can hold it here, he's got the same short G3s, longer G2s, and a little split out here on this antler here. As a younger buck, he had a little split there. Then when he went to a next year older, he turned into a 5-point side there. So that there is him the previous year. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool to find that. So yeah, that was him. I have trail camera pictures. His beams kind of have the same droopy look to them. They come out, kind of droop. and this guy here is the same. His beams come out and they kind of droop here. It's obviously the same deer. I look back, I have trail camera pictures of him last year, or the 2020 season, and I figured, I'm like, hey, he's probably a 2-year-old. Then this year here was like a 3-year-old this past deer season, and unfortunately I found him as a deadhead, and I wasn't sure how it worked with finding deadheads in New York, so I called and talked to New York State DEC and asked them, I'm like, how does it work? Can you just like pick up a deadhead and just keep it in New York State? And they're like, yep. They're like, that's fine. It's just like finding a shed antler. You're allowed to just pick them up and you're allowed to keep them. So I picked this deer up, and it's kind of cool to have this deer. One of my friends looked at him and they're like, that deer isn't from this year. They're like, that skull's all cleaned off. Look how clean it is. And they're right. The skull, it's already cleaned off. The bugs got to him already. And I was like, I'm sure this buck was from this past season. I'm sure he was. And I was like, I matched him up with that shed antler. I'm like, he's got to be that deer, because otherwise it shoots my whole theory of having his shed from the previous season. So I looked at trail camera pictures, and sure enough, I have pictures of this buck in our food plot September 25th. And then after that, he disappeared from trail cameras. So I don't know if he got poached, hit in the road, wounded early in archery season, but my guess is that he ended up dying probably early October, when the weather was still warm, and coyotes cleaned him off and the bugs did the rest. So that was that deer. So that was kind of cool to find that. I guess some of the other antlers here, it's cool to find matching sets. That's just pretty cool. I found this, it's not a big deer, but a little Pennsylvania buck, nice little matching set. So that was pretty cool to find a little matching set, if I can hold them right there. So that's kind of cool. I found this antler here, kind of a big gnarly deer. This one's from Pennsylvania. It's not anything too special. It's just big. It's just kind of cool. This one will be fun. This was at my dad's farm, just a nice little 8-point. I don't know, I might be able to recognize this deer in years to come. Hopefully he can turn into something like this eventually, and honestly he could. It might take him 4 years till he gets there, but he could turn into something like that. This antler here, I picked this one up in Pennsylvania. This buck here has a lot of potential. He's just a pretty nice solid side there. And then this buck here, I picked this side up here from this buck. He's pretty cool. I'm excited to see this buck in the years to come. Yeah, he's got really good potential. I don't know if he's 2 or 3, but he's a young deer at any rate. So he just has really good potential. Yeah, finding shed antlers, I haven't figured out how to do it yet. Like, I find shed antlers, but I don't, like, I know all the right ways to go about finding shed antlers, but it beats me. I can't figure out how to find them, because I have some bucks that I am specifically looking for the shed antlers from specific deer, and I put on 25 miles. I rode looking fields for a long while, and there's some bucks I don't know where they get to, honestly, but then they'll show back up the next season. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, I remember that deer. Then sometimes you pick up their antlers, and then it's like, oh yeah, that is that buck. I have his antler from the previous year. And not everybody gets so excited about deer and antlers and hunting. Some guys just go out to the woods, and whatever comes along, they shoot it, and they got meat for the year, and hey, they got a rack to throw in the garage, and they're happy. But I just get really excited about watching deer from year to year, and recognizing different deer, and seeing the genetics, and being able to recognize certain deer. Like for instance, this buck right here, this was a 9-point that we had running around in 2007 on my dad's farm, and he has the same genetics as what a buck that looks very similar to him has that's running around. And it's just pretty cool. Every deer looks a little different, and it's fun to watch them. So that's my spiel on antlers. So if you like antlers, then you probably will like my page. So catch you later.